I just want you to know, like, this is a super awkward thing. Just in general, all of them, especially with me and the coworker, like they're always just really awkward, and I think that's part of their charm. So, welcome back to another edition of the book club without a club, without joy, and instead we're hanging out with a special guest, Ben Arzate, the author of "Music Is Over." See if I get that on the screen, even though it's a podcast. I put them on YouTube sometimes. So I like to,
Yeah,
like I
thought
said,
that
really
artwork by
awkward.
Mark Wilson deserves to be seen. He did an amazing job on that.
Oh yeah, yeah. You'll also pick up as we keep going that I'm a very awkward. I don't mean to be awkward, but I'm just it's it's who I am. I probably shouldn't be drinking coffee this late too, but here we are. It's,
I mean, that's the charm of these.
but so it's been described as a bizarro novel. What is that? What is define bizarro?
The elevator pitch for Bizarro is that it's like, you know how there's like video stores used to have a cult section, so there you would find like trauma movies, weird B movies. Maybe you'd find like Lynch and Jodorowsky there,
Yeah.
Jodorowsky, Jan Schwankmeyer, like a mix of the B movies and the weird artsy movies. That's basically what Bizarro is. It's an attempt to sort of replicate that feel in literary form.
Okay. I knew I I knew I gravitated towards this and liked it so much because just the other day I had to explain to a coworker who the Toxic Avenger was. We did a deep Google dive and everything. So it's so awesome you brought up Trova. Like it's been so long since someone else has been like, oh yeah, Kauf or what was his name? Oh,
Lloyd Kaufman.
Boy Kaufman. I almost said Andy Kaufman. I knew I was the
Yeah,
opposite end of that spectrum. Totally wrong there.
maybe not completely opposite. They were both pretty weird. Well, they're
It's
both pretty weird.
so yeah. So needless to say, the book is very weird, but in like the best way. It it doesn't start off that way, but as you keep going down the rabbit hole, it just keeps getting more and more wild, and it's such a slippery ride. It's so much fun. It's such a fun book. The main character, Juntaro, did I say that right?
Juntaro, I believe that's how it's pronounced. Yes.
He's a he's a real person, right?
Yes, he is. He's
So
the lead of the Japanese noise band, the Garo Gary Gay Gay Gay.
so how did this come about of taking this actual figure and putting him into this fictional world? And I guess to kind of piggyback on the question as well, the whole so the novel, there's a disappearance. So did this person actually disappear, or did you incorporate? Is this fictional for the story?
They actually had disappeared. They they put out like one last EP that came across as very that uh, definitely indicated he was going through something, and then he just dropped off the face of the earth for almost a decade, and then he just came back, and that decade of where he was missing, was a big inspiration of me. To really like get into my thought process of the inspiration of it, I have to go back to my first novel, which also gives me a chance to shill it, The Story of the Why. This is put out by Cabal Books back in 2019. This is about a music journalist who tries to track down the mysterious musician Y. Beckhurst, who there was a single. Y. Beckhurst released a single and an album, and then completely fell off the face of the earth. Like there are no pictures of him. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows if it's an actual band or just one person. And so, listening to that album, I got inspired to write a story about a music journalist trying to track them down. And not too long after that, the I've been a fan of the Garo Gary Gay 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 for a while now, and other like Japanese noise music, like the Boredoms, Merzbow, things like that. Um, so I got the idea of, why don't I do a spiritual sequel to the story of the Why that tells the story of a musician disappearing from the musician's perspective, and Juntaro seemed like the most logical person for that.
That's fantastic. Like, I don't know, that's just so neat how you took so much inspiration from like life and other art forms and then combined them into something that is completely unique for sure. So that with that, so you just took the inspiration from the albums and the disappearance of the artist. Have you been to Japan, or are you just like really good at like top notch research?
Yeah, I did a bunch of research because I wanted it to have that vermicitude of referring to real places at the time Juntaro would have disappeared, and trying to track what some of the changes are the decade after he comes back. But that's also partially why it's set in like a fictional made up city, is so I didn't have to do that for the whole book.
Because yeah, I mean it's the mark of good writing too, where I couldn't tell if you actually like lived in Japan at some point or just dug in and found as much as you could and just channeled that through you. So
Yeah,
fantastic job there for
I guess
sure.
that's part of it, is writing these types of stories gives me the chance to do the traveling in my head, because the only time I've actually been outside the United States is when I went to Morocco for a friend's wedding. But I can't really afford to like travel out of the country on a regular
Right.
basis, so it's nice to be able to like immerse myself in these worlds that actually in these countries that exist through my own lens.
Right. So do you set a lot of other stories in various places, or is it just kind of just wherever the character takes you?
But yeah, my first novel, The Story of the Why, it takes place mostly in Mexico, mostly fictionalized Mexico. Um, my it was the second published but third written novel, Elaine. It takes place in Upper Michigan, which I actually have been to. I went there on a regular basis because that's where my grandpa is from. So with that, I feel there was more. I tried to put more of like the subjective feeling of how I would experience like Upper Michigan, um, and that's true of the other two. But I also had to incorporate a bunch of research into it.
Okay. Yeah, no. It like I said, the research definitely pays off for this story. Um with the characters, did they kind of just appear as you were writing it, or did you have a plan to have these different eccentric characters that would be met along the way? How did the I guess how did the process go with the because it's almost like a Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz kind of thing where they're going down a path in a way and they're just meeting different people. So how did this cast and crew of eccentric people just show up?
Well, when I write, I tend to not use an outline. I tend to have just a vague plan of where I want it to go. So for the most part, most of the characters did they did just kind of pop up as the story went along. Um, the character of Kotono, is, I guess, the co-star of the book, was, I guess, the only one who was really like planned from the very beginning. Um, and the other characters I'd say that were planned from the beginning are the characters of Keith and Dr. O, which those two are a reference to another musician. If you are familiar with the, I guess, war of them. I won't like name who because I think that's part of the fun, but it would be obvious to someone who's a huge fan of that musician.
Reason I was curious about them in particular too is because I love their back and forth and how they were like hunting or he was hunting the doctor down and then the scene where they meet the the rainbow colored blood is just fantastic. But I loved how you also characterized the doctor in such a subtle way where you said there was something off and you couldn't figure it out. And then finally just kind of tucked in there, you're like, oh, he never blinked. And I thought that was just fantastic. I thought that was just wonderful.
Yeah, that made sense to me because like is portrayed as like having a skull for a head, so I just imagined him having like this skin mask over it that doesn't fit quite right and doesn't actually blink.
That's that's fantastic. So also just a couple other things that I've unconventional things that I really enjoyed about the book was one thing was your copyright statement, which I loved it. I mean, it's it's inviting people to just take something you've created and just run with it further. And ideas kept coming. It was like, well, what if I blacked out every couple of lines and made a poem or something? I love the idea that you're just willing to share your work in a Creative Commons kind of way. I guess I should preface that so if someone's listening, what the copyright actually says. Was that something you intended to do, or you just decided later, or?
Well, that's something that I do with the books that I've self-published. I publish them under what I call anti-copyright, which basically means I put them directly in the public domain. Like with my other publishers, obviously, like there's the issue of the publishers. So, I'm not gonna like say, hey, don't copyright this. Malarkey Books invited me to do what I wanted with the copyright, so I wanted to do that because I have a very strong belief that ideas can't be owned, and I'm really in favor of people like doing things like remixes and incorporating plagiarism into their own work and things like that.
So is there has anyone do you know of any pieces out there that are based off anything you've done yet, or how does that all work? Or you just, if they tell you, great, and if they don't, great?
Yeah, they aren't required to. I would prefer they did because I want to see it, but if someone has, then they haven't told me.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I just love. I mean, obviously I work at a library, so I'm always like, everything's free. It's just take it, just bring it back later. I don't know. So the fact that you're kind of doing that same idea with something you've
Yeah,
created, I think is wonderful.
it
And
was definitely something I felt the need to double down on when I saw authors who I won't name complaining about archive.org. I'm like, screw you guys. I'm just, please pirate my books if you want to.
definitely. Well,
I try to do a thing where if this is another thing I should say, if anyone sends has given like any amount of money to any local mutual aid associations, email me proof and I'll send you one of my books for free.
that's awesome. So go ahead and I guess state your email. So if that
It's Ben ARZ13
there it is. So you might if you're not around the Jefferson Public Library, then that's a great way to snag a copy of one of the books here. The other unconventional thing that I really loved was how every chapter started with 1, 2, 3, 4. I I love that. Something about it, like because the chapters are really short, your pacing's quick, so it's just like little punk songs over and over, and it's just like 1, 2, 3. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Did that come as you were writing, or did it come later? How did that come about?
Well, that's what the Garo Gary Gaga Gay does. Like at the beginning of a lot of their songs, they'll just scream out 1, 2, 3, 4. Um, Usually, if it's like even if it's just like a minute of them screaming, so like every other minute you'll hear them just screaming 1, 2, 3, 4. One of the funniest ones that they did that on was a recording where the A side they scream 1, 2, 3, 4 at the beginning, and then it's like a 2 or 3 minute recording of someone taking and then the B side is again them screaming 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's like a 2 or 3 minute recording of someone.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you can see why they inspire me so much. Like the the title, of course, is based off of a recurring saying that the Garo Gary Gay 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 does, which is post melody dedicated to no one, art is over. And so I
Okay.
just took like music is over.
Yeah. No, it's because I think that's isn't that near the?
Yeah, that's one of the epigraphs at the beginning.
Thought that sounded familiar. That's and one of the other things that I loved, but it was surprising, is how by the end, how like almost hopeful the book is. Because like I said, it's dark and it's weird, it's wild, and then it's so like uplifting. Did you plan to kind of end it towards something like that, or did that just come naturally as you wrote
Um,
it?
I felt it kind of came naturally because, especially because you know, Juntaro did eventually start making music again, and I think the new music is just as great as the old stuff. So it seemed natural to me to end it on a hopeful note.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely comes through in the reading for sure. Um, I don't know. You want to read a little bit of it, or you got time, or
Sure,
you feel like it? I know you said you were a little stuffy. But
that's cool. I'll go ahead and read the first chapter if that's okay. This is chapter one of Music is Over. Juntaro fixed his makeup in the mirror. In the bed of the Love Hotel room, the chubby salaryman that he'd come with had fallen asleep. He didn't mind. It wasn't a satisfying encounter, but he couldn't remember having one since Tetsuya died. He put his makeup back in his purse and stared at his reflection for a moment. He wondered how much longer he'd be able to stave off the inevitable signs of aging that would eventually come. Juntaro walked out of the bathroom. He looked over the salaryman's naked body sprawled out on the bed. In the past, the image may have stirred him to wake up his partner for tonight by tonight, however, it only made him want to go home and be alone. He grabbed his hat off the floor, put on his shoes, and left the room. He passed the front desk. As he passed the front desk, he felt self-conscious in his blouse and skirt. He held his breath until he got outside onto the sidewalk. There used to be a thrill in coming to these love hotels that prohibited gay male couples. He was almost always able to pass himself as a woman without the staff suspecting a thing. Knowing that he might be found out made the visits with Tetsuya or some other man he picked up even more exciting. Now it didn't even seem worth it. He regretted not just having the salaryman take him to one that catered to gay men. He started his walk home, the neon lights of the Shinjuku district burning above him. The cool night air and the sounds of the city cleared his head, and he soon realized his stomach was rumbling. He found the nearest convenience store and bought some snacks. He brought them to a bench just a couple blocks away and sat down to enjoy them. As he ate his egg sandwich, he heard footsteps approaching. He glanced up to see a woman walking toward him with her head down. He figured she must be drunk or tired and went back to eating. He felt the bench shaking slightly as the woman sat down quickly on the other side as if her legs had given out. He looked over at her. She was rummaging in her trench coat pocket for something. He noticed she was wearing a surgical mask. It wouldn't have bothered him normally, but he noticed a wide scar running down her cheek and behind the mask. He remembered hearing the rumors, but he thought they couldn't be true. They were just ghost stories. Then the woman slowly turned her head toward him. Her gaze made him freeze. She leaned toward him with her eyes wide and said, "Am I pretty?" Juntaro's mind scrambled for the right thing to say, but nothing came out of his mouth. The only thought that came clearly to him was that if his bowels weren't empty, he would have evacuated them right there.
so I will have to say that because the nature of where this is going, I'm gonna have to like put some beeps through that if you're cool with that. Because everything we do has got to be like borderline G. So, but if you're cool with
Oh yeah.
beeps, I can beep.
Oh yeah, go. Yeah, go. I forgot that you said that, but yeah, go ahead and beep what you need to.
but but uh but yeah, so that chapter doesn't warn you about how like wild the book gets. I mean, it kind of sets the tone a little bit, but it just keeps as you dig into it, it just gets more and more just like you said, fun in a bizarre way. So I know something that generally interests people at the library when they talk to authors and readings is how did you go about getting the book published? That's always like whenever there's a talk, that's what people want to know. So what was your journey like?
Well, it's not really interesting. I would just like keep my eye out for any press that was looking for either horror or bizarro leaning novels, and I would submit it to them. And I think I've said this before, but I actually like do not remember how I initially got it in Malarkey Books' hands. I at some point I submitted either an elevator pitch or a sample chapter to them and completely forgot about it. I have no idea like uh, where I found them or what drove me to submit to them.
Right. Well, I mean, whatever it was, good thing you did. That's
Yeah. So it was a surprise when the editor Alan got back to me and wanted to read the full thing.
oh, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Um, oh, this is one of the parts where I just kind of start blanking. I don't mean to. I feel like for these things, you're supposed to keep like a rhythm, but I naturally just kind of talk slow. So I feel like almost like I gotta like jog for a second and I gotta catch my breath. It's how it's the nature of them. But
Yeah, don't worry about it.
so if so like I said, if you're not at the Jefferson Public Library or uh show of proof with the email, where else can someone snag a copy of the book?
You can go to malarkeybooks.com for both a physical copy and an ebook. You can go to Amazon if you really want to get a physical copy. Of course, you can also go to your local indie bookstore and order there. They would be able to special order it. You can email me if you want, and I'll send you a signed copy along with a custom bookmark. Um, let's see. And you can also get the ebook off the website godless.com.
Okay, so like there's all sorts. I didn't realize there were so many avenues you could.
Yeah,
I mean, I pretty much just live in the library, so that's where I just think books are. I think they just show up somehow at a library. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I'm sure if you went to the library and asked for it, maybe they'd be able to get it to you through an interlibrary loan.
I know you keep doing all this stuff, so I know you. It's a big deal for me that you were willing to take out the time to sit down with me. So
Oh yeah, of course.
I thought this was great. I had a great time.
Yeah, thanks so
Uh,
much for having me on. Probably a
yeah,
good idea because I live like right in the heart of downtown Des Moines, and people like to do what's called scooping the loop, where they drive obnoxiously loud. It doesn't usually happen on Wednesdays, but sometimes it does.
it's so they just like it's like a thing where they just like try to rev past.
Yeah, they just rev around the center of Des Moines.